Okay, we
All
are
right,
we are live.
we're live, and I hear some noise in the background. Hi, and welcome to the third talk in the Research End series. So, just a quick reminder: one of the North Stars we have at the firm is how we define research R&D. We use the OECD definition, which covers everything from basic research to experimental development. So, Research End is a talk series. That's designed to encourage and equip our employees to apply research in ways that foster collaboration and innovation across the firm. And related to our talk today, Research in AI, I'm honored to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Tilanka Chandrasekera. As you can see, he wears many hats. He's a trained architect and the Christian Salmon Endowed Professor in the Department of Design and Merchandising at Oklahoma State University. He directs the Mixed Reality Lab, which is a cool, collaborative, multidisciplinary space, and his research focuses on the integration of virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence in design education and practice. And we are in the company of royalty. He was recently named the 2025 IIDI Educator of the Year in recognition of his innovative teaching and research. So a few thoughts on AI, some which I hope serve as food for thought and without alarming you. The first is let's talk about ethics. I don't know if you saw this. A recent study by Anthropic showed that the leading models do troubling things. They do unethical things, like when pushed, when stress tested and given few options, they will do things like resort to blackmail. And in extreme cases, they even allowed fictional deaths if it would protect their interests. And then with respect to inequalities, if you thought the old digital divide was bad, wait till you see this AI divide. It's dividing the world into nations that have and those that do not. As you can see, most of the benefits are accruing to the US, to EU, and China. They have over half of the world's most powerful data centers that are driving the development of the most complex AI systems. And related to that, 150 countries have zero AI computing hubs. Now, thinking about the future, quantum AI is the fusion of quantum computing and artificial intelligence. It's expected to completely redefine what's computationally possible, and it's closer to reality than you might expect. And this is just a question, open-ended. How do you think it's going to impact the AEC industry? So before we hear from Tilanka, which is why you're all here, I'd like to invite Chad Ritzma from our design technology group to help us connect the dots between research and AI. Chad, the mic is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Felix. Yeah, well, I'm going to really just kind of cover, how we're currently using, AI here at the firm, and how we're using it not only to just, innovate and experiment, but also how we, starting to implement it in across our different workflows. So when we talk about design and ideation and creativity, obviously some of you have access to Midjourney and Firefly. For pre-design ideation sessions, this helps us visualize ideas quickly, set the mood, set tones really fast. And it also gives, this capability to non-traditional design team members to contribute visually and in meaningful ways to the brainstorming sessions. Obviously, we have Copilot, right? So we're using that for communication workflow automation. Copilot helps us with our meeting minutes, summarizing conversations, tracking action items and next steps. This allows us to, focus more on strategy and design and experimenting and being creative versus, the drudgery of doing transcription, writing those notes, and that administrative side of things. And we also have our AI friend, Billy, who's helping us, streamlining our work again, find documents, templates, answer those questions, help onboard people, and to help seasoned staff, work smarter and faster. And on the innovation side, when we're talking about digital twins, we're starting to explore AI features and digital platforms using natural language to actually, talk with the building, like what's the air quality right now? So taking those complex building data and turning it into improved decision-making in real time. So it is starting to work with us. We're starting to work with AI and integrate it into our daily work lives, and using it to clean up design files or formatting presentation decks or helping you format a Word document, allowing you to draft a communication out to a team member faster and iterate faster, and hopefully overall boosting that productivity. I mean, when we talk about, how is it going to start to, it's already starting to affect so many different industries. How is it going to affect, the AEC industry and firms like ours? And what does that look like in the future? What are some, kind of 10 ways that AI is going to start to impact how we work in the next, beyond what we're doing now in 2 to 5 years? Obviously, it's going to help us design faster, automate documentation, smarter QA, QC, catch those errors, those inconsistencies. It's going to allow us to take that design data and turn it into compelling, client-friendly narratives. And also with the natural language queries, you talking to your BIM model like you're talking to a teammate. All different types of ways that we could use it, in space planning, predictive simulation, AI design, using for simple buildings, personalized client co-creation. And of course, this is going to create, new creative roles that open the door for AI savvy designers, storytellers, and technologists. I just want to make sure that I'm staying on time here. I'm not spending too much time talking about what we're doing, but if you do have questions, you can go ahead and use the Q&A button up there, and please submit your questions. We'd love to learn, how you're using AI in your daily work life. And then a quick plug for next week, we do have AI Week, where we're going to cover, continue this conversation. So I hope you can join us there. Now I'm going to hand it over to Tilanka.
All right. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. So I'm just going to share my screen again. All right, there we go. So I'll start my presentation now. So this screen that you see, that's a picture of me in the 90s on a Windows desktop computer running Eliza. I don't know if you are familiar with Eliza, but this is not really me, just to be honest. It was generated through ChatGPT. However, Eliza was one of the very first computer programs that tried to have a conversation with a human, like an early version of ChatGPT almost, but very simple. It was created in the 60s by a guy called Joseph Weizenbaum. And it worked kind of like a psychotherapist chatbot, like Billy that you have. Eliza didn't actually understand what you were saying. Instead, it used pre-written scripts and pattern matching to pick up certain keywords and responded with generic replies. For example, if you said, "I'm feeling sad today," Eliza might respond with, like, "Why do you say you're feeling sad?" And it made people feel like they were being heard. Even though the program had no real understanding or intelligence, it was a big deal back then because it showed how humans, people, could emotionally respond to a machine that simply pretended to understand. Interacting with ChatGPT back in November 2022 kind of reminded me of Eliza a little bit and made me think, is this just a better version of Eliza? You probably heard the comforting phrase, "AI won't replace you," right? So that's kind of the vernacular right now. But let's be honest for a second, and if pop culture has taught us anything, we should at least question that. Like, think of Terminator, think of Matrix, even 2001: Space Odyssey. These stories didn't exactly paint AI as your helpful assistant, right? So for the next half an hour or so, I want to put two ideas on the table, just as ideas, not as like a conclusive comment or something, just as an idea. First, ominous statement, you will be replaced by AI. And second, more of a question. Will you be replaced by AI? And that question leads to another. How might it happen? Because whether or not it's inevitable or not, understanding how it could happen is a key to anything, not just AI, but everything, right? And for my fellow Gen Xers out there in the today listening to this, let's borrow a little wisdom from G.I. Joe. If you remember G.I. Joe back in the 90s, knowing is half the battle, right? So are you concerned about AI and its effect on the AEC industry? If so, please do scan the QR code that you see on the screen, and we can revisit this at the end of the presentation. So just scan the QR code, and it'll take you to a small form which asks you the same question. And we'll revisit this at the end of the presentation. I'll give it a couple of seconds so you can scan it. All right, moving forward. When I started interacting with ChatGPT, as I said, back in November 2022, it really made me stop and ask, what exactly is AI? At first, I honestly thought it might just be a fancier version of Eliza, that old chatbot from the 60s. But the more I used it, the more I started thinking, I've heard of AI. I've worked with people on AI tools. Starting from 2018, I've worked with the computer science department here on AI and developing some AI tools. But working and doing stuff with ChatGPT kind of made me question, So throughout history, we've created tools to extend ourselves, starting with stone tools, fire, language, industrial machines, electricity, computers, and internet, and then getting into AI right now. Each one changed the way we live and think. So it got me wondering, is AI just the next tool in that long human story of tools, or is it something entirely different? The more I played around with different generative tools, the more it got me thinking, maybe AI isn't just another tool. Maybe it's something more, like an interface. It reminded me of Ivan Sutherland's Ultimate Display, a space where digital and physical realities blend seamlessly. And speaking of that idea, I got something fun. This is for Felix, because I know Felix is a big Star Trek fan. So scan this QR code and it'll take you to a scene from Star Trek The Next Generation. The episode is called Schisms. And in that scene, they use natural language to build an environment on the fly. It's a great example of how AI might function as the kind of interface that Sutherland imagined, not just as a tool, but as more as a collaborator. So when I say AI is an interface, I don't mean in the traditional UI UX sense. It's user interface, user experience sense. It's not a button that you click or a screen that you swipe. AI powers that interface, but it isn't the interface in the visual and physical sense that we're used to. Instead, we can look at it through a human-computer interaction or design theory lens. AI mediates how we interact. It adapts to us. It responds conversationally, spatially, or even emotionally, as you probably have experienced already. It's not just presenting options, it's shaping the flow of interaction itself. And if we go a step further into like a post-phenomenological sense, AI starts to act as a cognitive interface. It doesn't change how we do things, it reshapes how we perceive, right? How we make decisions, or even how we understand ourselves. So it's like if you have had a conversation with ChatGPT, you probably experienced this to a certain extent. So it's not just a tool or a screen, it's a layer that alters the human experience from inside out. When we think about interfaces, a few classic types usually come to mind. The command line interface, where you type stuff out, and the GUIs, or the graphical user interfaces, where you interact with the graphical user interface like Windows software, or a natural user interface like virtual reality or augmented reality, or in this case, AI. And as we move from one to the next, what's really shifted is how transparent the interface becomes. By that, I mean how much it gets out of the way. The best interfaces feel like an extension of our own thoughts. In simple terms, they disappear. Like you don't see them anymore. Over time, interfaces have become more natural, more intuitive, and in Heidegger's language, they've gone from what he calls present at hand to something we notice and struggle with, to ready to hand, something that just works, fading into the background of our experiences. When an interface really clicks, when it really works, we don't even feel like we're using a system. It just becomes a part of how we think, act, and create. And that's where AI starts to feel different, right? We're not just using it anymore. We might be merging with it. It could be the final interface, one that doesn't just react to us, but thinks with us, adapting almost to our intention so smoothly that the line between user and tool begins to blur. Now, my PhD focused on how interface transparency, the way that interface disappears, especially intangible graphical user interfaces, impacts cognitive load and design creativity. So it raises a big question, at least for me. If we think of AI as an interface, how does it change the mental effort required to create? And more importantly, how does it shape our creativity itself? So to understand how AI affects creativity, we developed a study in the fall of 2023. And this study looked at how Gen AI can influence creativity and mental effort in design students, not just while they use it, but afterwards as well. Students were split into two groups. And were given two design tasks over two phases. In phase one, only one group used a text image AI gen tool to help them design a piece of urban furniture. The other group worked without it. In phase two, both groups completed a similar task, but this time no one used AI, the Gen AI tool. What's interesting is that the group that used AI in phase one still outperformed the other group in phase two. Their designs were more creative and they reported less cognitive load. So the key takeaway here is that AI didn't just assist, it trained as well. By showing design possibilities in the first phase, the AI influenced how design students thought and created in the next phase, even without direct assistance. So in this case, AI acted more like a design mentor almost than just a tool. If you're interested in this study, you can read the full paper by scanning the QR code on the screen. And this was published in the Journal of Architectural Computing in 2024. So you can scan the code to read it if you're interested. The studies show that AI is actually pretty good at coming up with design concepts, especially when the parameters are clearly defined and the concept is more metaphorical, right? In these cases, it really shines, generating ideas that feel both creative and intentional. But when it comes to contextual design, as designers, architects, where intuition, empathy, and real-world experience really matter, the question is, can AI keep up? Right? Designing with context isn't just about generating ideas. It's more about understanding people. It's more about understanding places and the subtle cues, right? And that's where humans still have the edge, at least for now. Another thing that we noticed was that if instructions weren't clear or specific enough, the AI would generate images that missed the mark, sometimes by a lot, as you can see. So one key takeaway was this: the more precise your prompt, the better the output. Giving AI detailed, well thought out instructions really made a difference in the experiments that we did with it. What we really needed to focus on was giving designers, and especially our students, a more design-focused way of prompting. That meant going back to the fundamentals of design, thinking about form, thinking about function, thinking about intent even before touching AI or any other tool for that matter. For students, this was a great reminder to strip things down to the basics, right? Bare, basic elements of design. Instead of feeding AI prompts loaded with existing styles or trends, they had to rely on the core design principles. That's what helped them generate ideas that looked original, not just remixes of what's already out there. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the term prompt engineering. It kind of feels like calling a poet a verse engineer. It just misses the creative spirit of what really is happening, to me at least. Still, it's the language everyone's using right now. So for our students, prompt engineering, we leaned into it, but with a design spin. We gave them a framework for creating or crafting prompts that are actually useful design work. Instead of vague descriptions, we encourage them to think in terms of design fundamentals like composition, style, texture, etc. By including these elements, their prompts became more intentional, and the AI-generated output started to reflect real design thinking, not just aesthetic guessing. Circling back to the prompting and how GenAI works, some of the early generative imaging tools like Midjourney back when they started, some of the early examples did quirky things like making psychedelic-looking cats when you ask for just a regular cat. That might just be because the models were influenced by artists like Louis Wain, who was well known for drawing increasingly surreal cats late in his life. If his work showed up a lot in the training data, it would make sense that AI picked up on that style and then it would give us those examples, right? This kind of thing shows a bigger issue though. Generative AI learns from massive amounts of data, and that data isn't neutral. It carries biases, unlike traditional search engines where you can see the source and decide what to trust. GenAI gives you content that's stitched together without telling you where it came from, for the most part at least, right? Sometimes ChatGPT and such, it gives you citations of where it came from. So we have to ask ourselves, are we getting real information or just something that looks convincing because a machine generated it? And who gets to decide what goes into the machine in the first place, right? These thoughts of agency, control of information, and the bias in AI prompted the thought of how diverse individuals, like students, may consume AI and AI-related information. How would students with different learning preferences approach AI? So naturally, again, we decided to run another study, this time looking at how students' learning preferences might affect their experience with Gen AI. For this, we used the VARK model, VARK, which stands for Visual, Auditory, Read-Write, and Kinesthetic Learning Styles. The idea is that people tend to have preferred way of learning, or in some cases, they might be multimodal. So like a person could have visual plus read-write, or auditory plus kinesthetic. Since GenAI tools are mostly visual and text-based, we wondered, could that really create a bias? Would students who prefer other learning styles, especially kinesthetic or auditory, struggle more with these tools? And if so, how would that affect their performance on creative tasks? To find out, we had students take the VARK questionnaire to determine their learning preference. Then we asked them to use a GenAI tool to complete a small design task. Afterwards, they filled out a technology acceptance model-based survey, which measures how useful and easy to use they found the tool to be, and whether they'd be willing to use again in the future. The goal was to see if learning style influenced how students engage with AI in a creative setting, and whether that shaped their willingness to use these tools in the future. What we found was actually pretty interesting. There was very little correlation between students' VARK learning style and how they felt about using GenAI. In other words, whether someone was a visual learner or preferred reading, writing, or learn more towards kinesthetic or auditory learning, it didn't really change the way how they perceived or used the AI tool. The takeaway here is that GenAI tools seem to have a pretty broad appeal, regardless of learning style. But of course, we need a large sample, as always, to confirm that across the board. So there's still definitely room for more research in this area. If you're interested in this research, you can read the full paper by scanning the QR code on the screen. Again, this was published in the Journal of Architectural Computing. The full paper is available for you to read if you scan the QR code. After reviewing our own findings, it felt like a natural next step to start integrating Gen AI into our curriculum. But we also wanted to get a sense of what other people were doing with Gen AI, especially in design education. I regularly run these tech surveys with both educators as well as professionals in the design industry, usually every couple of years. So in 2023, we added a few questions specifically about AI use. We repeated the same survey this year, asking about things like AI awareness and applications in the construction industry, which tools people were actually using, etc. Now, when we compare the data from both years, 2023 and 2025, there weren't any dramatic shifts across most categories. Now, this data that you see on the screen are from the design schools. A few areas saw some growth, yes, but nothing groundbreaking, except when it came to new courses, which was really interesting. This stood out. The jump in AI-related courses suggests a real change, not just casual interest anymore, but actual integration. It points to institutional support, faculty willingness to experiment, and maybe even student demand starting to push things forward. But when I followed up this year with some deeper questions about faculty support, the picture wasn't quite as encouraging. And for example, when I asked the question, are students or faculty encouraged to explore generative AI independently? 97% said yes. So clearly, most institutions are open to exploration, which is great. But when I dug into whether faculty are actually being supported in integrating AI into their teaching, it told a different story altogether. The question I asked was, have faculty received training or guidance on incorporating AI into their courses? 32% said yes, but 50% said no. That means half of the respondents said there's been no formal support at all. And while a third had access to training, it's still a long way from widespread readiness, especially given how fast AI is evolving. We also asked faculty how they stay current with emerging tech like AI and virtual reality and such. Most of them said it was self-directed learning, peer collaboration, and through conferences and webinars. So most of the learning is happening on an individual or peer-to-peer level without much institutional structure in place. The takeaway here is that faculty are interested and are even taking initiative, but many are navigating the shift on their own. Like whatever they feel that they needed to do, they would do. We've developed our own AI courses and built them into our digital design curriculums, where we have a graduate program for digital design, which has some sections specifically focused with design practitioners like you in mind. We have degrees, we have online degrees, we have certificates that focus on digital design, which we have also incorporated AI curriculum as well. But honestly, there's still no formal institutional support behind it. It's just like just a general openness to the idea. So while we're moving forward, we're largely doing it on our own and through our own initiatives. Now, when it comes to the industry side of things, I run similar surveys, as I mentioned, with design professionals too. Asking about their awareness, current use, and future plans for AI. And just like with the faculty, the results from 2023 and 2025 weren't drastically different, as you can see, but there were a few clear trends. AI awareness has basically hit saturation, as you can see. Almost everyone's heard of it now. There's a growing recognition of AI's potential in the construction space, and we're seeing steady increase in actual use of Gen AI tools. And maybe most importantly, there's a stronger focus on future integration. Firms are starting to think more seriously about how AI fits into their workflows. So while the numbers haven't jumped dramatically, the mindset is clearly shifting from curiosity to planning. One question I was especially curious about was this. Does your organization have any formal strategies or policies for using AI in design workflows? I want to see if companies are actually putting structure behind their AI efforts, or if it's still more of a figure it out as you go situation. It's one thing to experiment with AI tools here and there, but having a clear strategy or policy shows a whole different level of commitment. So this question helped gauge whether firms really stand on integrating AI in a more intentional, long-term way. Looking at the results from 2023, it seems like the industry was still in an exploratory or even resistant phase when it came to AI. Most usage was unofficial, happening at the individual level, and some firms even flat out said not applicable at all, while others expressed concerns about IP theft or dismissed AI as a waste of time. A few people were quietly using tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney for concept art and such. But the overall vibe at that time in 2023 was cautious curiosity with no real direction. Now in 2025, things are starting to shift, it seems like. The results from the survey this year show signs of organizational engagement. More firms are piloting AI tools, and some have even formed internal working groups to explore integration more seriously. While many respondents said things like, I'm not sure, I'm not involved, which actually suggests that efforts are moving up the chain towards leadership level planning. So some of the key trends in 2025 were like AI is now being used intentionally in design stages, concept development, automation, feasibility checks, and such. Policies aren't fully in place yet, but they are in progress. The shift is clear from ad hoc experimentation to strategic planning. So what exactly are firms using AI for right now? As mentioned previously in the introduction, it mostly falls into two big buckets. Generative design tools, which we are familiar with from previous tools that we've used. Pinch, TestFit, those are some of the gen design tools that designers have been using. These help automate layout, planning tasks, and such. Gen AI tools like Veras and Maquette are used for producing visuals, concepts, and even design variations. At this point, Gen AI is basically baked into most rendering programs, and Chaos, the company Chaos, owns Veras as well as Enscape now. So they're moving towards this Gen AI rendering pipeline almost, right? It's becoming sort of a standard feature. In short, AI is moving from novelty to everyday design tools, especially in areas that we see repetitive, data-heavy, and visually driven work. So given everything that we've seen so far, what might a solid AI strategy look like for a design firm? If I were putting one together from what I've learned so far, I'd structure around these 5 key areas. And I think having this sort of a roadmap is important for designers to have a better vision of what we need to happen. So number 1, vision and goal. Start with why you're using AI. Boosting productivity? Is it for boosting, reducing repetitive tasks? Or is it to gain a competitive edge? Aligning it with your firm's business goals and client needs is important, I feel like. Number 2 is assessing where you are at right now. Auditing your current workflows, tools, data, identifying gaps, looking at what you have, like the BIM files that you have, the material libraries you have, project archives you have, and seeing where AI can plug itself in. This may also mean investing in more infrastructure, like custom AI tools. Number 3, identifying AI use cases. Having case studies for each of these would help people understand better what we can use AI for. Concept generation, maybe have a case study for that. Visualization, maybe have case studies for that. Space planning, client interactions, project forecasting, sustainable modeling. Having case studies would help understand the tools better. Number 4, I think, is the most important, and this was discussed in the introduction today as well, having an understanding about ethics behind AI. So number 4 is build an ethics and policy framework around your roadmap. Developing clear policies on bias and representation in data sets. Like what we saw previously in my previous slides, I was talking about the cats, right? So bias is important, understanding this bias is important, and how it represents itself in the data set is important. Data privacy and transparency, since you're dealing with information from your clients, that's important. IP and authorship of AI-generated work, there's a lot of buzz around this. There's been numerous laws enacted, not laws enacted, but at least case laws on AI-generated work. Many firms are starting to train their own AI models on their proprietary data to manage these types of concerns. So if you're developing a roadmap, I think it's important to invest in this wholeheartedly. Then finally, the 5th one is training your team, creating AI training for all levels, leadership, designers, tech staff, etc. Encouraging a culture of learning, experimentation, and of cross-disciplinary collaboration, not just be in your own silos, but understanding what other people are doing as well. So with all these new AI tools that are supposedly making design easier, it really makes you wonder, right? Does that mean everyone's about to become a designer? If you can just type in a prompt and get a rendering of a design that you want, does that level the playing field, or does that just change some of the rules entirely? It's a question worth asking, and we need to rethink what design actually means in this AI-assisted world. Back in 2023, Architizer ran a global survey of architects and designers to get a pulse on how the profession felt about AI. The results, over half said they were concerned that AI would impact jobs in the AEC industry. So while AI was clearly on people's radar, there was still a lot of uncertainty. Concern, yes, but not really panic. In 2024, the RIBA conducted a similar survey, the Royal Institute of British Architects, similar to AIA in England. They surveyed its members. The responses show the field still had mixed feelings. And when asked if AI is a threat to the profession, the responses were almost evenly split. 35% said yes, 36% said no, which pretty much sums it up. There's a tension between the risks and responsibilities. People are cautious, but they also see the potential, right? Especially if we're thoughtful about how we use the technology. Given all the concern about how AI tools might be used, not just by designers, but by non-designers too, we wanted to see if it actually made a difference in the design process. So we ran a study. We brought in 3 groups: interior designers, other types of designers like fashion designers and graphic designers, as well as other non-designers. Everyone was given a simple design task and was asked to use a Gen AI tool to come up with a solution. Now, it's worth noting that this was a really small sample, so the results aren't conclusive, but it gave us some interesting insights into how different backgrounds might affect the way people work with AI in design. In a nutshell, designers from other fields like fashion or graphic design not only enjoyed AI-supported tasks more, but their work was also rated as more creative overall by a panel of design professionals, which included architects, who used the creative product semantic scale. Interior designers did slightly better than non-designers, but not really by that much. Surprisingly, formal training in interior design didn't give anyone a clear edge. AI seemed to level the playing field, allowing creativity, and I use this term mildly, to come through regardless of background. And one key takeaway from this is enjoyment mattered. The more participants enjoyed the task, the more creative their work tended to be. So how we feel during the process can directly shape what we produce. So remember that QR code I asked you to scan at the beginning? That was linked to a quick survey. Now let's take a look at what you all thought. I'm curious to see how your views, what you really thought about this matter. If you weren't able to access the survey, you can just scan in now and answer the questions. I'm gonna take a look at what the answers were really quickly. So I see 37 responses. 37 people responded to this question. So 48.6% said yes. So almost 50% of you are concerned about the risks. Not almost. Right now we got another response. Oh, we got 2 responses. Well, almost 50% of you are concerned about the risks that AI poses to jobs in architectural visualization and the AEC industry more broadly. Which kind of matches up with the previous surveys that we saw that was done by RIBA and Architizer. So it's half and half, right? It's almost half of you are concerned. As for us educators, we are not worried at all. In fact, we already have surrendered to our AI overlords. I run the Mixed Reality Lab at OSU, and this is our newest toy, the Proto Luma. It's a holographic device. We like to call it the Holobox. We've started experimenting with how holograms impact learning, and one of our first studies was concluded with 30 students which showed some interesting results. Holograms may actually be highly effective in teaching compared to other modalities. We're now working on securing funding to develop an AI-powered teaching agent that could run on this device. Basically, it's like a AI professor who might be more efficient than us regular fleshies. And let's be honest, like it's probably going to be cheaper for universities too, and they'll be happy. So they really need to rain some money on us. This image that you see here, though, is of a Native American elder from the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee Indians. We're working with them on a meaningful project using holographic technology to capture and preserve their spatial memories for future generations. So I conclude my presentation with this one quote that perfectly puts it. Computers are incredibly fast, accurate, and stupid. Humans are incredibly slow, inaccurate, and brilliant. But put together, they are powerful beyond imagination. And that's kind of really the point, right? AI isn't here to replace us. I don't feel like, at least. It's here to extend us. For me, I think the real power lies in this partnership that we have, or we will generate in the future. So let's go back to where we started with Eliza. Back in the 60s, Eliza could barely hold a conversation, yet people projected meaning onto her responses. She didn't understand anything at all, but it felt like she did. Now we're facing tools that not only sound intelligent. I mean, have you had conversations with ChatGPT like on voice? Man, that's incredible. It's not just sounding intelligent, it can generate, optimize, and even collaborate, right? The question has evolved from can machines talk to can they design, can they decide, and even eventually replace us. So I'll leave you with this thought. Will you be replaced by AI? Or perhaps you will be replaced by AI. Which one it is might come down to how we choose to engage, creatively, critically, and responsibly. Because from Eliza to now, the one thing that hasn't changed is that we're not just reshaping the tools, we're shaping ourselves through these tools. So in conclusion, I want to thank Canon Design, Felix, and Cameron for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tilanka, for such a brilliant presentation, very provocative. I guess there's so many themes that emerged one of which is resistance is futile. Like, just accept it. And I know I know, right? Just walk on. There are a number of questions in the Q&A, and before we hand over the floor to Cameron, I'd like to urge all of you to stick to the very end, because relating to some of the really brilliant things Tilanka was saying, Cameron has some very tasty tidbits to share with you, but only if you stick to the very end. So Cameron, I'm sure we have questions in the Q&A, and the mic is yours.
Thank you. Fantastic. Yes, thank you, Tilanka. That was very insightful. And we have a handful of questions that have started off. If anyone else has questions as we get through this discussion, feel free to keep putting them in the chat. I'll just keep reading them. So first, Delia just wanted to say that she loved all your references. She didn't have a question, but she wanted to say thank you. Michael Korb asks, how is the complete integration of AI informing our hiring processes today, i.e. who we hire and not how we hire, skill sets, talents, etc.? What do you think an architect will be in a world fully immersed in AI?
Is this a question for me, though?
I think the valuable part of that question that you could contribute to is, where do you think the talent pool for designers in the future would be in terms of strengths, in terms of potentially things that are no longer needed, just based on the research that you've done and the things that you've seen?
So I've spoken to a lot of designers because, I mean, I'm curious about AI and how that fits into palette of tools, right? Like as designers, and we teach our students, and I'm also the internship coordinator for our program. So it's important for me to give them the necessary tools to succeed in the future. So we've dabbled in quite a few tools. Now, again, going back to the presentation, I feel like it's not like knowing all these tools, right? But understanding where you fit in as a designer. It's like, say, for example, creating a presentation, you can ask ChatGPT to do it, right? I don't know if you've noticed, like in my presentation, there were some deliberate quirks. Specifically, I wanted to bring in that human aspect because humans are flawed. I mean, that's the truth, right? So our presentations need to be flawed. I mean, at least I think that way. So I deliberately made some changes in the alignment and such, just to, I don't know if anyone noticed, but I mean, I wanted to do that deliberately. But having that, because I'm saying this very seriously though, right? Because I read a lot of dissertations, I read a lot of essays that students submit, and now, like, I know, like when something generated through AI comes to me, I know it's not wrong, and I encourage students to use ChatGPT to make their language better. It's not wrong. It's just like, I know what the content is going to be if it sounds a certain way. I'm not being biased against like using ChatGPT. It's like, I know. So when there are changes, like when there are changes in the flow, I know the student has gone and, hey, I think I need to change something here. So they've gone in and actually have done the work that's necessary, rather than just asking ChatGPT a question and getting a paper down. So that's where I think the future is in any field, not only in design, not only in liberal arts or whatever. I think that's where things are going. Like when a person sees something, they know if it's ChatGPT or is it some Gen AI generated image. So adding that human touch is going to be important, and that's what I ask students to do. Like, you can ask ChatGPT all you want, like you can ask for anything, but adding your bit, like your thought process, is going to be important, right? So whatever tool you use, I think that's what's important. When it comes to like reviewing portfolios, we've seen this, right? So I mean, you all probably have seen this more than us. We review portfolios before they go on an interview for a job. But for you guys who interview designers, you've probably seen a formula for portfolios. And even if it wasn't designed through a Gen AI tool, it becomes old, right? You see these formulas, right? The clean lines, maybe like a slash. You've seen this, and suddenly you come across this portfolio that has done something different and that catches your eye. It's the same thing with AI, I feel like.
Yeah, I think exploring that strategic humanness, looking at that balance between the perfection that can be achieved through technology and like the human error and like creativity and just spark, balancing those two in a way that not only delivers something very valuable, but also like something or something, I guess, um, visually appealing, but also something valuable and human, especially if you're creating for humans at the end of the day. That does seem like a very thought-provoking new type of strategic approach to consider. Cody asks, or Cody says, I will use ChatGPT for organizing and refining notes, checking tone, refining data trends, or making a template to start from. For image generation, I see the saturation of AI slop in all forms of media. How are we taking responsibility for image generation in both energy use? Have we considered buying carbon offsets for the energy consumed? And then the second part of this question is also with ethics, given all generation, especially image generation, is built off scraped art from real artists. Given the development trend, will we respond once it starts collecting and using our firm's designs to the masses? I think, like from a firm perspective, that's an interesting thing to consider. I know that some tools do learn from the prompt generation process that you go through, and some don't. And there's also variety based on the type of license that you have with that tool. But Tilanka, would you mind speaking to generally like sustainability and ethics around the use of these tools?
Yeah, so sustainably wise, I mean, it's true. Like it takes a lot of energy consumption. So there is an issue there, right? So I don't know how to answer that question because I mean it's just how it's the nature of the technology. However, coming into the idea of this copyright issues, it is a valid issue. But see, now I'm not saying this is right. I'm just offering a counter argument. I'm being the devil's advocate, if you will. So if you take Caravaggio, if you know Caravaggio's art, he's a brilliant artist. He's my favorite artist. But if you take his art, he had a whole bunch of pupils under him. And they painted the same way as Caravaggio. I mean, if you look at the paintings of his students versus Caravaggio's paintings, if you didn't know Caravaggio or his work, you wouldn't be able to say which one's done by the student, which one's done by the artist, right? So it's like mimicking almost. It's not the same content, but it's mimicking the artist. So I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying like AI does the same thing and it's correct, but I'm saying can we think of it as sort of the same process? Like is AI looking at these artwork and recreating it in a different way? If you were an artist, like, and if you were a good artist and you went and looked at a good artist's paintings and you painted the same way, wouldn't it be the same thing, right? I'm just offering an alternate way to think of it, not an answer per se, but
Yeah.
And Cameron, not to interrupt, but just so that we don't run out of time, maybe we answer two more questions, starting with Susan Morgan's and one other, so that you have a couple of minutes to talk about this really cool thing tied to Tilanka's rock, some which you shared with us, and then we'll also have a minute at the end for a ceremony.
Totally. You read my mind, Felix. Susan asks about generally AI searches as well as teaching people about that. She asks, as a longtime reader and teacher, I've been fascinated by how the foundations of the mindset and approach of library searches, going back to card catalogs and the Dewey Decimal System and segueing into early internet searching, are/should be the foundations of successful AI use. That foundational approach bridges language concepts, lateral thinking, etc., and the brain powering the tool. To what extent are you considering how we teach people to think to structure inquiry in ways that work with the tools of the day, today, AI, tomorrow, who knows, before they begin working with the tools?
That's an interesting question, especially given the context that Susan, right? Susan mentioned. So interestingly enough, today we have a conference here at OSU which focuses on AI, and I'm actually one of the co-chairs for that conference. And I just had this conversation with a person about like AI. If AI were to replace people, which would be the best options to go? And someone said, "Hey, librarians, we don't need them," which I'm not saying that at all. This person said it. But anyways, I was thinking like this lateral thinking, this, what's it called? There's a term, serendipitous finding. That's what they use in informational science. It's like, that's how the Dewey Decimal System works. So AI kind of does that. I mean, all searches do the same thing, the serendipitous finding of information, right? So sometimes I would type something into ChatGPT and I would get something totally different that I didn't even wanted to get. But it gets me thinking, not exactly what ChatGPT wants me to use, but it gets me thinking in a different way. So there is some lateral ideation going through, like, if you're using these tools. But I mean, I'm always cautious with ChatGPT or any of the other tools, like especially when you're using it for search. Now, Google always prompts you, "Hey, do you want to do a AI search?" I say no, because I'm not really 100% still down with that. Like, I'm not really convinced that AI search is really at that level, you know? So whatever tools that you get, I mean, I don't know if this is a accurate answer or not, but whatever tools that we have or get in the future, it's up to us to make informed decisions. That's why, I mean, that's where the human aspect comes in. I mean, that's how I feel, at least.
Totally. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to try it yet. I agree with you on like general Google AI search. I can usually find the answer in like the first one or two results anyways, so I really don't want that like AI. But they have like a deep research one that shows you links to like what exactly they're citing, which I think is going in the right direction. But you know, we'll see over time how it develops. Last question that I'm choosing because it has been upvoted by a few people. Andy asks, I'm concerned that with the increased use of AI for design and for everything, that we will stagnate in the 2020s style from now on. With all of the models being trained on data from before the present and AI now training itself, aren't we concerned that we're using AI to author us something that's already stale?
Exactly. I mean, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, that's where this whole presentation, like the whole point of this presentation, was kind of to address that issue. And I don't know if you'll use Suno AI at all. I think it's pronounced Suno. It's SUNO. It's a music generating AI, which is mind blowing, because you can select which genre you want and create a song with lyrics you want, and the AI would generate the lyrics if you wanted to, but it creates amazing music pieces. But it prompts the same question, like, if we're using the same styles over and over again, like if you're recycling the same things, where would novelty come in, right? And that's what I mean when I was talking about the portfolio aspect. That was what I was trying to direct it towards. Like, if you don't add your humanistic aspect, right? AI is not one size fits all. It's not like the solution to all. So that's where the human aspect comes in. You can use it to, I don't know, to brainstorm ideas. You can use it to figure out like the proper direction of what you want to do. But I wouldn't say rely on. I mean, humans, we don't rely on anything at all. I mean, if you think about history, we don't rely on anything. It's just I mean, it's another way of extending ourselves, but shouldn't rely on any tool for that matter. I mean, you have a car, right? Everyone here probably drives a car, but you never know when it would give up, right? Like when a tire would go off, like when you need to fix the engine, like you wouldn't know. So you don't put your life on the line on the car, right? So it's the same thing with any of these tools that we use. I feel like, and that's kind of, I agree with the question. I mean, that is a question. So the answer for this question would be to add that humanistic aspect, as I mentioned, with the example of the portfolio. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. It's a tool, it's a strong tool, but that doesn't mean it's our only tool, and that doesn't mean we have to use it as our only tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
And
I wanted to add something. Sorry, I want to add something really quick. Back in the 90s, I don't know if you remember, those blue lines were on everything. Like the blue line cup. Do you know what I'm talking about?
With
It
the,
was
the
on,
squiggle.
yeah, it was on everything. It was on plates, it was on cups, it was on clothes, it was on everything. But I mean, that went away because people get tired of the same dang thing, right? So it's even AI, people are gonna get like tired of looking and seeing the same thing. Like the person that asked the question, the slop of AI, right? We're gonna get tired of it.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Tilanka. Unfortunately, we've run out of time and it seems we're losing people, even though the attendance was really healthy. I think what we'll do is we'll forward a lot of these questions to you. Like we only got through a fraction of them, really provoking questions. And maybe if you care to respond, we can share responses with the rest of the firm. So in the meantime, to thank Dr. Chandrasekera for sharing his brilliant insights with us today, we're sending him this beautiful bespoke certificate. It was designed by Audrey Taheri from the Portland office. The framing arrangements were made by Daniel Larby from the Buffalo office. So it embodies everyday collaboration across Canon design. Thank you so much, Tilanka. And for the rest of you who stuck around to this point, thanks for being such a great audience. Enjoy the rest of the day. If you're still in the grip of the heat dome, be cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.